have Megan Taplin. Megan Taplin is a park manager for Table Mountain National Park. She was born in Cape Town and studied at Stellenbosch University. She studied nature conservation and zoology and has a master's degree in environmental science. Megan Taplin has been working at Sand Parks since 2003 and has been appointed to many parks across South Africa. Her ability to run an operation smoothly have made her a valuable asset to her field of expertise. Not only is she a brilliant park manager, but also an Old Westerfordian. Can we please give a warm welcome to Megan Taplin as she returns with her ultimate.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a big deja vu for me to be back here. I didn't think I'd be standing on this side of the hall. I think the last time I stood here was at valedictory in matric, so it's been a long time. I matriculated in '92, so it's a long time ago. So today I just wanted to chat to you about what it's like to be a park manager, and especially what it's like to manage Table Mountain National Park, because all of you see it every day, and I'm sure some of you enjoy it, go up onto the mountain and do things there. Others might think it's just a mountain, but there's actually a lot that goes into managing it, and this is definitely one of the most complex and challenging parks to manage across the country. So I work for an organisation called South African National Parks, or Sand Parks, and we run 21 national parks across the country in 7 of our 9 provinces. And there's over 4 million hectares of conservation estate that we manage. And we have some of the oldest protected areas in the country. Kruger National Park is the oldest, and then the oldest marine protected area in South Africa as well, at Tsitsikamma. Our vision as Sand Parks is a world-class system of sustainable national parks, reconnecting and inspiring society. So you can see even in that vision that we're talking about the parks, but we're also talking about people, because that's the important component of parks. If people don't support parks, they won't be there in the future. And our mission is to develop, protect, expand, manage and promote a system of sustainable national parks that represent the natural and cultural heritage assets of South Africa through innovation, excellence, responsible tourism and socio-economic benefits for current and future generations. Okay, what does my job entail? So it's not just about going for a walk in the nice fynbos and looking at the plants. Not at all. There is biodiversity management which comes into it, but then there's also socio-economic transformation, bringing the people into it so that they can benefit from national parks, and tourism. Without tourism, we wouldn't be able to run our national parks, because tourism provides the funding for our conservation efforts. Then there's also park expansion and consolidation. There's stakeholder engagement. Stakeholders are anyone who benefits from the park, or is interested in the park, or is affected by the park. Cultural heritage management, we've got a lot of that in Table Mountain National Park. Managing the people that work for me, and obviously the finances and administration, which means we sit behind a desk and look at spreadsheets. Okay, I just thought I'd start off with my journey. What did I study? I went to Stellenbosch and I did a Bachelor of Science. In those days, if you wanted to study conservation, you had to do it through agriculture or forestry. Now there's other departments and other things you can combine it with. But I did a 4-year degree, so it meant I did honours as well. And then my studying didn't stop there. I completed my Master's at Wits in Environmental Science in 2022. That was quite challenging to try and study while I was working and being a mother, and through COVID. But I managed to do it, so I'm very proud of myself for achieving that. Then other things you could study if you wanted to get into a career in national parks. You could do a degree in the sciences, you could do a degree in tourism or social sciences, or you could do a diploma in nature conservation, and you can upgrade that as well. So I wanted to start off, apart from what I studied, all of these aspects that you can see on the screen there is what came into my journey in sandparks or in conservation. And it all started out with my standard 8, no, I think it was standard 8 careers night. We used to call it standard 8 then. And you had to choose some careers to go and sit there and listen to. They got guest speakers to come in, and I went to the nature conservation talk. And it was very disappointing, but it spurred me on to get to where I wanted to be. So this big guy walked in like this, and he had his khaki shorts on, and he had a big knife on one side of his belt, and he had a pistol on the other side of his belt, and he said, "You girls that are sitting here, you're not going to get a job in nature conservation easily. If you want to, you can go into research or environmental education, but leave the rest of it for the guys." And I was very upset by that. And I thought, I'm not going to listen to him. I can't believe he said that. And I ended up where I wanted to be in the end. And it's been a long and sometimes difficult journey in terms of being a woman in conservation, because although a lot has changed in the last 20 years, but it was always a male-dominated industry in the beginning. And even my first interview that I had, there were two men that sat there and asked me if I could ride a horse, and if I would shoot a dog if it ran into the park and it started eating animals. So that was all they were worried about, and they thought because I was a woman I couldn't do that. So you always, I think passion is a big part of it. Whatever you're thinking of going into after school, it has to be something you're passionate about, because otherwise you're not going to get through the difficult parts and get to where you want to be. So I started off in working in Addo Elephant National Park, which is in the Eastern Cape. And I started off working with communities, local communities, talking to them about conservation and working with school children with environmental education. Then I moved on to doing communications, and when I spoke to Mr. Anderson, he was very happy to hear that I was going to say that English is an important subject because it helped me a lot in my career. So don't think that English or Afrikaans or those kind of subjects are not going to benefit you, because they can help you out in your career to get to where you want to be. So because I was good at English, I could communicate and I could tell a story about conservation, and that helped me go up to where I wanted to be. I also worked in marketing, which was important for selling the conservation story. I went overseas for a while before I actually started studying, just after I started studying. And that was important to me, to get that experience of being in different countries and trying to understand different cultures, what was important to them, what drove them, and that helped me to understand cultures in South Africa as well. And then working with stakeholders is very important, especially in this park where you've got people living in and around the park. It's very important to take into account what their different needs and wants are and see how you can meet them halfway. And then, of course, the biological side of things also helped. Okay, just quickly, if you want to work in national parks, you have to be prepared to work flexible hours, after hours, hospitality hours if you're working in the tourism side of things. You need to be a jack of all trades. If you're working in a small national park, you need to be able to do things like maybe fix a water pipe or something when there's no one else around to do it. Some of the parks that we have in South Africa are very remote. There might be some harsh working conditions. When I worked in Mountain Zebra National Park, we had temperatures of 40 degrees in summer and we had snow in winter, so that was interesting. You might be separated from family and friends if you're working in remote areas. You always need to have a passion, as I said, because it's not the salary that makes us do our jobs, it's the passion for wanting to conserve those natural assets for everybody else. You need to be able to understand different cultures and people and stakeholders. You need to want to make a difference. You need to be innovative and creative. You need to be resilient and determined. And yeah, you do get a salary, but it's not why you're in the job. Just some other career options in protected areas or national parks. I'm not going to go through them, but you can see there's a whole range of ones. Anti-poaching unit manager, socio-economic transformation manager, GIS, planning, hospitality, vets, all those kind of things. Now let's go to Table Mountain National Park. In terms of managing the park, this is the Bible of the park, which is our park management plan. And why it's so important is because we have to, according to legislation, develop one, but also we have to involve people in it. So we have to invite stakeholders to give their contribution to it, to say what they want to see in the plan and to say where they see the park in the next 10 years. So every 10 years we do this. And inside that plan is also the conservation development framework, which takes into account which areas of the park are sensitive, and then takes a whole lot of factors into account, and then says we can have this kind of visitor center in this area, or we can have so many people in this area, but this area is more sensitive and we need to keep people, we need to only have hiking in it or something like that. We also have a whole lot of objectives. I'm not going to go into the detail, but it covers biodiversity, cultural heritage, responsible tourism, constituency building, which is working with the stakeholders, and learning for people and awareness, and then effective park management as well as managing the park in the context of the region. Okay, then just about Table Mountain National Park, if you didn't know exactly where it is, it stretches all the way from Signal Hill in the north, about 50 kilometers to Cape Point in the south, and it covers about 25,000 hectares. And what's very unique about it is it's a park inside a city, or it's actually a city inside a park, because we have the Cape Peninsula mountain chain, and then we have the marine protected area in the sea as well. It's primarily an open access park. That's how it's very different to most of our other national parks. There's no fence around it, there's very few gates. People can walk into the park from literally thousands of places along the edge of the park. People live around the park, people sometimes live in the park too. It's the second most visited tourist destination in South Africa. The biggest tourist destination is the waterfront, and Table Mountain National Park is the second. We get about 4 million visitors a year. We can't count them because we don't always have gates where people go in. But lots of people use the park for their daily run or their daily hike or their walk with the dogs. We've got over 900 kilometers worth of hiking, mountain biking and horse trails. And we've got some global icons in the park like Table Mountain, the Cape of Good Hope and the Boulders Penguin Colony. We're a natural World Heritage Site and also a new Seven Wonder of the World. Okay, talking about biodiversity, the most important thing about the Table Mountain National Park is it's part of the Cape Floristic region, which is a World Heritage Site, and it's all about the biodiversity of mainly the fynbos. There's over 2,000 species of plants in this small little area, which is very unique across the world. Lots of rare and threatened species. Then we've also got the marine protected area all the way around the Cape Peninsula with some exclusion zones. And so we've got marine biodiversity as well. Then some of the work we do with biodiversity management is restoration and removing alien invasive plants, alien invasive animals as well. We have the Working for Water program, where we take out alien plants, and also fire management is very important. So if you can look on the left there, that's showing all the different vegetation types. There's about 5 or 6 different types of fynbos, and then we've got some forest and some renosterveld and some struntveld as well. And looking at the map on the right, it shows the marine protected area all the way around the Cape Peninsula with 6 different exclusion zones where you're not allowed to fish. Okay, then we have some interesting little creatures in the park. That's a klipspringer at the top there. We reintroduced klipspringer to the park, so hopefully you'll spot them on some of your hikes. And then that other little frog is called the Table Mountain ghost frog. And why I showed that one is because we've had to do a lot to try and protect that frog. We've had to build boardwalks over their habitat because people were trampling the rocks under which the tadpoles lived. and we're going to do a fire in Cape Point just to try and get more habitat for them. Then we've got the penguins, the African penguins at Boulders. They're a really endangered bird, and they're about to become critically endangered, and Boulders is one of the special places or the sanctuaries for them. And then obviously all the fynbos, proteas and things like that. In the marine area, we've got the Cape Canyons Ecological and Biological Significant Area, which has things like the kelp forests and other important habitats. Then also the marine protected area is very important for benefits for people. We've got our small-scale fishers and our commercial fishing that happens in these areas as well. But it's also important habitat for the penguins to feed, so we've got to balance those two. Then also the park's very important in terms of job creation, and there are a lot of local communities that work in the park. These are most of them that work in the Working for Water program and the Working for Wetlands program. It's a poverty relief program which employs 60% women and 40% youth, and harnesses their energies to do conservation work. Okay, then this is so one of the unique things that we're doing in the park at the moment with the help of some volunteers. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this video, I might go past it, but doesn't want to play. It's something called heli hacking. Our teams that I've just showed you, the Working for Water teams, they work mostly on the flat grounds and the gentle slopes. But when it gets to the steep slopes where we've got alien invasive plants like some pine trees, we can't get to them. So we have this group of volunteers who comes in, and a helicopter lifts them up, and they hang onto a rope, and it drops them off on the steep slope, and they cut down the trees. So they get donor funding for that. Okay, I just want to play. Okay, then we also do ecological burns to make sure that the fynbos is in the right state, and for various different reasons. And that's something I quickly want to talk about, is fire management. We have had, from April last year to date, we've had 100 fires that we've had to respond to, so it's a big part of what happens here and what we manage. We have an integrated fire management plan where we work with other stakeholders like the Fire Protection Association, the City of Cape Town. We also have a huge volunteer force that people come in and help us fight fires, called the Volunteer Wildfire Services. fynbos is a fire adapted system, so every time people see fire they panic because they worry about whether it's going to damage houses and all sorts of things, maybe kill animals. But fynbos needs fire to be able to keep its same vegetation composition. So we need fire to happen, it's just that we need to protect the urban area as well and where people live. So we look at the different veld ages, and different fynbos types needs different years of burning. So some need to burn every 10 years, some need to burn every 5 years. And then we also have to look at the urban park interface. So we've got the urban area all the way around the park, and we have to make sure that there's legislation that says if a fire starts on your land, you're responsible for anything that the fire causes, any damage that the fire causes. And then we also have to think about climate change. Fires are probably going to get more frequent in the climate change scenarios that we predict, and also winds are going to get stronger and things like that. So as I said, we've had a lot of fires this year. We've had 26 fires in December alone, and I'm sure you all heard about the one that happened in Simonstown, where it burned for 9 days. But we had lots of resources there, like 200 to 300 people fighting the fire on any day, and up to 6 helicopters in the air dumping water on the flames. But we managed to make sure that no houses were burnt down, and no people were seriously injured, and no one lost their lives. Okay, and then this one just shows how very close the fire comes to some residential areas. This is also, I think, around the Glencairn area. we monitor the fires. We have a fire investigator who checks what causes the fires and also helps us, because once we contain a fire, it's not spreading anymore. There's still days of work to try and put out all the hot spots so that they don't flare up again. So we use drones to go and look at where the heat is and see that these are areas where we need to put out the flames, or it's smouldering underneath the vegetation. Okay, that one as well. And then I just wanted to show you what causes fires. So in most national parks, fires are caused by natural causes. It might be lightning or it might be something else. But in Table Mountain National Park, most of them are human caused. In fact, we've only had one fire this year that was caused by a rock falling. But otherwise, most of them are from cooking fires that spread, homeless people that go and sit in the park and make a cooking fire, and then it spreads out of control. We have had also about 10 fires that have been caused maliciously, so someone's deliberately set them, and we're doing a whole investigation with the police to try and find that person or people. And so that just shows you, and then also things like people throwing cigarettes and that kind of thing. And then something else that's very important in Table Mountain National Park is safety and security. We have environmental crimes that happen, like abalone poaching in the marine area, flower collecting, herb collecting, and bark stripping in the forests as well. And the herbs and the bark are used for medicinal purposes, but the way they harvest it is unsustainable and kills the plants. Then we have crimes against visitors as well, things like muggings, theft out of vehicles, or actual vehicles getting stolen. And all of this is because we are so surrounded by a dense urban area, and any crimes that are happening in the urban area are spilling over into the park. We have an operations room where we get information in from all different sources, cameras, networks, and all those kind of things, to get intelligence to be able to plan operations so that we can catch the criminals. And we have a special operations unit called the Sea, Air and Mountain Team that got military training. They work with especially trained working dogs. We also have partnerships with the police and the city metro police to do joint operations. And then we also are busy recruiting new rangers at the moment because we need to respond to the crime that's rising. And what I wanted to end off with on this slide was that everybody needs to be responsible for their own safety. So we can't expect to go walking. I know some people like to go for full moon walks or things like that on Lion's Head, but if you're going to go and walk at 2 o'clock in the morning, you must expect that there's going to be other nasty people walking around as well. Okay, these are our dogs. We've got 6 dogs that we work with. They're Belgian Malinois and Dutch Shepherds, and they're specially trained for, they can do detection work where they can sniff out abalone and ammunition. They can do apprehension work where they take down a suspect that we're busy chasing, and then they also do tracking, so they can track people as well. I hope this video is going to play. Let me just see. Okay, unfortunately you can't hear the sound, but it's just music anyway. But this is just a video of our Sea, Air and Mountain team and what they can do with their dogs. Okay, we also sometimes are able to get a helicopter in, which we get from Kruger, that can help us with tracking down the suspects and arresting them. Okay, and this is another very short video of theirs, where they're busy targeting some abalone poachers in Cape Point. So there are abalone poachers that go out either on foot, they get dropped off and then they walk down to the coast, or they go out on boats. Okay, so those are the confiscated bags of abalone. Some of the divers sitting there. And these are some of the arrests that we've made with all the abalone that's been confiscated. Unfortunately, when we only catch them when they're out the water, the abalone's already died, or they've even taken it off the shell, so we can't save it, but at least we can try and stop the activity from happening. We also do a lot of prevention where we track vehicles that are known for carrying abalone poachers or abalone. In the right-hand picture at the bottom there, you can see some of the tools that they use, which are, I think they're called shuckers, that they use to dig the abalone off the rocks. Then also something that happens is bark stripping in the forest, where people come in and strip the bark off the trees, and when they do that, the trees die. And what we've started is another project with some volunteers, and we're painting the bark of the tree with PVA paint to make it less desirable for them to use, because it's got paint on, they might not be able to use it for medicine. So that seems to be working, but along with that, we're also trying to track down those and confiscate their goods, so that it's not lucrative for them. Okay, when you're walking in the park, you'll always see there's signs telling you what the rules and regulations are, as well as giving you emergency numbers. So I was talking to you earlier about taking responsibility for your safety, and one of the questions I was asked when we were planning this talk is, is it safe to walk on the mountain? And it is safe if you keep a few things in mind and just use your common sense. One of them is taking down the emergency numbers, and others is making sure you're walking in a group, making sure at least one of you's got a phone, so you can tell people if you get into trouble. Also, sticking to the designated paths, not using some funny app that tells you to go off onto all funny little paths and getting lost. And then making sure that you're also not littering and all those kind of things. And making sure you're prepared, you've got the right shoes, you've got enough water, all those kind of things. Okay, then I think I'm near the end of my talk now. And what I wanted to end off with was, I think one of the reasons why we need younger people to be able to work in nature conservation and join us in working for national parks is that you've always got good ideas and you might have new solutions. We have a lot of volunteer groups that are working in the park. Some of them want to remove alien trees, some of them want to help us with safety, some of them want to help us with fire. There are all sorts of different things. There's even a group that comes and helps us take graffiti off the rocks and the signboards, because some people think it's very funny to put graffiti all over things, which isn't nice for everyone else that's trying to experience the park. So it's all about finding how to harness our collective resources and solutions to the common pool challenges. So we've got this common pool resource which is used by everyone. Everybody loves the national park and wants to benefit from it, whether it's relaxation or it's medicine or whatever it is, but we all need to find the way to balance the needs. And then technology is very important. 20 years ago we didn't even have cell phones really, and now we've got apps, we've got drones, we've got all sorts of things that can be harnessed, but it's all about how fast it's developing and what we can use for a conservation solution next. And then things like biomimicry, which is, if you look at that second picture from the top, it's about using nature's solutions for modern living. So that is a very high-speed train that was developed in Japan, and it was modeled on the beak of a kingfisher because of its aerodynamics and everything like that. So there's lots of solutions that can be found. And then things like green bonds. That's the latest development where people can now invest in conservation. We've got a rhino bond that's happening in Addo Elephant National Park at the moment, where people can invest and then they get paid out when the rhino population grows. So in other words, they aren't poached and they're growing well. Sorry. back. And then things like what to do with environmental degradation and new ways to tackle pollution. There's somebody who's developed a factory that can take all sorts of plastic, even flip-flops, and make them into bricks and construction material and concrete. So we need to find new ways of doing things. So that's where I'm asking that all of you who are interested can apply your minds, and there's lots of volunteer groups that you can get involved in if you are interested in the park. And I hope to see some of you walking around the mountains and making sure that no one's littering and everyone appreciates what a beautiful place we have. So thank you very much.
We've got about 7 minutes left, so we've got a few questions from our side, and then we'll open up to the pupil body. Right, so firstly, you mentioned that visitors don't pay to enter Table Mountain. How do you guys get your funding for the park?
Okay, yes, we do. Most of the park is open access. You don't need to pay. But then we do have a few pay points where people pay. So if you go into Cape Point, you pay. If you go into Boulders, you pay. If you go into Silver Mine, where you can go and swim in the dam and picnic, you pay there as well. And then also the cableway, which is, it's a concession, so we give it out to a private operator, but we get a percentage of the turnover. So the cableway gets about 1.3 million visitors a year, Cape Point gets about 1 million visitors, and Boulders gets about 800,000 visitors a year. So that funding does come into the park, but what's important to realize, we also have things like filming in the park where we issue permits and people pay for those permits or events. But what's important to realize is that we have 21 national parks and only 4 of those parks actually make a profit. The rest operate with a deficit. So we pool all the funding to make sure that we are still conserving the important parts of the country or the important ecosystems. So somewhere like Richtersveld National Park, which is right up in the desert, and there's really interesting little succulent plants that occur nowhere else. But they're not going to generate a lot of tourism, so we need to cross-fund the national parks.
I was just wondering, for the controlled fires, you were saying some species of plants needed 10 years and some needed less. How do you make sure that one species isn't getting burned too much and some isn't too little?
Okay, well, it's really difficult to control when we're not starting most of the fires. So, you know, fires that are starting from homeless people's fires or whatever else it might be, a cigarette or things like that, you know, then we can't control where they're burning and when, and we just have to manage them as best we can and try and put them out. Especially, we also need to take into account if they're threatening people or houses, then we can't just let them burn. But we do plan ecological burns, like I said, so every year we look at the age of that famous type and see it hasn't burned for a long time. It means that, you know, the proteas are not, there are not so many proteas, for example, because some protea species need smoke to germinate their seeds and things like that. So then we plan burns that we can do in the off-season of burning and try and manage it that way.
You mentioned you faced a lot of sexism when you started with your career. Do you still feel like that your workplace is quite sexist, or do you think it's mostly improved?
I think it's come a long way. I think, you know, from those early days when, you know, there were mostly males, there's a lot of women in conservation now. We've just appointed about 12 new field rangers, and more than half of them are females. So I think women are coming into conservation, and I think the legislation also the regulations also help to get women in. And then also, I mean, for the first time we've got a woman CEO, so I think definitely things have changed in that regard.
All right, that's good to hear. Can we get some questions from the audience now? All right, one question. All right,
Okay, he asked why, he's noticed there's a lot of fires in Cormacky and where? Cork Bay lately, and why is that? Those fires, some of them have been caused by homeless people. Some of them, so for each fire we get a fire investigator to go and look at what might have caused it. And some of them have been, as I said, homeless people's fires. Others have been religious groups that go into the mountain to do some ceremony and they burn candles, and those get out of control. And then there has been some of those cases are the ones that we think are being done maliciously, so being started intentionally for I don't know what reason. But we're busy. We've opened a case with the police, and we're trying to see if we can catch those people.
All right, I think that's our time up. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us. I think we all learned a lot, especially any matrics who might be interested in following a similar career. We've got a little gift here to say thank you.
Okay, I also we're on. I'd like to thank the Outdoor Club, so we weren't introduced at the beginning, Kessia, and Nathan for what you've done. Thank you very much to Ms. Taplin for joining us today. I was thinking, I'm not sure if there's any career, any job really that can't contribute to the many aspects of the work that you do. So from me, thank you to you, Outdoor Club, and thank you again. One last round of applause. Thank you.